It is the week of Thanksgiving, and I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Football Show. It is a hell of a day. It's a hell of a week to talk ball. It's one of the best football weeks/weekends of the year. What a time to be alive. Absolutely excited for today. Joining me to do just that, to talk a little ball, is Dalton Del Don. Dalton, what's going on, buddy?
The good news, I should say the bad news, Harmon, is I snuck through my $9 million survivor pool with Houston last week. Just 600 people remaining. The good news for you is odds strongly suggest this is the last podcast I subject you to Survivor Talk because I have a double tap week. I have to get through the Thanksgiving slate and then a week 12 in which I do not have a favorite bigger than 3 or 3.5 points. So yeah, this is probably the last time you'll have to hear about this. But man, that Texans game that was exciting.
Yeah, CJ Stroud made it interesting in both senses of the word. Yeah. So I'm excited to hear about it, especially for the Thanksgiving slate. I'm really interested to hear who you end up going with there. I genuinely, I am interested in hearing about it because it's a tough slate of games to pick from here. On that note, obviously, a shortened week here for us on the podcast. We are combining Stat Nerd Thursday and the Viewer's Guide preview into one episode. So we are going to provide you one stat you need to know for all 32 teams. And quick shout out to producer Colin for doing the heavy lifting on the stats this week. So he did a great job. Usually I put in most of them. Colin's been stepping up. Shout out to Colin for that one. We love to see it. So shout out to producer Colin. So we're going to provide you with one stat you need to know for all 32 teams. We're going to actually go in order of the games as they are played, as they will be played, and decide whether they are a binge, stream, skip game. So a little new wrinkle to the preview there. Depending on when you're listening to this, feel free to skip ahead of some of these games if they've already taken place. Time codes are provided in the pod description. With that, let's dive in to the Thanksgiving slate, starting off with Packers at Lions. Lions are a 7.5 point home favorite. It's a 46.5 point over-under. Dalton, our stat for the Packers is actually a Lions defense stat from John Daigle, who notes that the Lions defense has been shredded every time they've been asked to step up. Geno Smith has gotten them for 23 fantasy points. Lamar Jackson, 33.9. Justin Herbert, 28.4. Justin Fields last week, 21.2. Jordan Love also completing 54.5% of his passes for an 8.8 YPA under pressure coming out of Green Bay's bye. That is an interesting note ever since that bye week. Our Lions stat is that Jameson Williams ran 25 routes last week, which was third on the team. He has definitely not been surpassed by DPJ, anything like that. So Dalton, I really like the way this game sets up from a fantasy perspective, from a real life perspective. What do you got on this one?
Teams trailing by 10 plus points in the final 4 minutes had been 0-83 before the Lions' win last week. Detroit has lost 6 straight games on Thanksgiving for whatever it's worth. Their defense has definitely taken a step back. That's probably the biggest takeaway here is after looking like a top 5 unit, they've really allowed some points and yards, especially through the air. And Jordan Love continues to show growth the last few games, especially the last 2 weeks. But then again, he's going to have to play without Aaron Jones. So this should be a fun one. Jared Goff struggled mightily last week. Historically, he struggled against cover 2. The Bears played at a league's second highest rate. He had 2-3 interceptions, could have had 2 more, including a pick 6. Would have been 97 yards to the house the other way. Instead, Gibbs scored a touchdown the next play. They're pumped up coming off that win. This should be a good game. You're starting Gibbs and Montgomery. I mean, you're double tapping even in possibility in DFS here because the Packers' biggest vulnerability is against the run. And Gibbs, while he's giving up goal line work to Montgomery, he's also getting it and he's dominating the target. So hopefully it's high scoring and a fun one back and forth.
Jahmyr Gibbs has 4 straight games of 95 plus scrimmage yards from scrimmage and a touchdown. I mean, he's been great. David Montgomery's been great. He's a big reason in that revenge game that they won last week on that final drive. He was awesome. This is a tough game for me to pick, buddy, because from your Survivor standpoint, it's a tough game for me to feel super confident about the Lions because that defense has been shredded. I think Jordan Love has been really pretty good lately. Like, I think he has turned a corner to at least being like a solid, viable starting quarterback who also offers really high-end moments, right? That's the cool thing about Jordan Love's game, is that he will try these trick shots. Jaden Reed is coming on. Dontavian Wicks has been really good for this team. Basically, like the reverse of their like the reverse of their snaps and routes has actually been like how good these receivers are of late. Like, these two current rookies are, I think, better than last year's rookies. So that receiver room is coming together. No Aaron Jones, though, is a big factor here. And I definitely can't get out of my head like Aiden Hutchinson making big plays on Thanksgiving at the expense of Jordan Love. That I can't get out of my head. And I also can't get out of my head that like the Packers' run defense looks a lot like how they've looked of late. Like how they've looked of late has looked more like how they looked the last few years. You know, the Steelers ran all over them. I feel like David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are settled up for big games here.
Yeah, so the Thanksgiving slate for my survivor also includes the Black Friday game. I don't have the Dolphins. I also don't have the Cowboys, and I had to use them a couple weeks ago, or this entry would have been dead. So I'm not like debating myself here. So I'm going with the Lions unless I want to do some game theory here. Could go my Niners, but without boring you, I don't have any other favorite on the Christmas slate. So there's probably going to stick with this Lions here. I hate the fact they came off this miracle come from behind win. I love teams coming off losses. I expect this to be competitive. The Aaron Jones injury followed by the Emmanuel Wilson injury leaves A.J. Dillon. Really hurts an offense. I know we're supposed to say running backs don't matter. Don't believe that's the case, especially in this one. And the Lions are relatively healthy, but that defense is suddenly vulnerable against a surging Love. So, yeah, I mean, I would take the points here. Expect it to be competitive. I don't know. Probably nothing to the Lions losing 6 straight games on Thanksgiving, but I like to avoid short week games in Survivor when possible. But it's unavoidable in this Thanksgiving one. But Goff has been so much better at home historically. The Packers do not play cover 2 nearly at the highest rate as Chicago. But yeah, he was really bad last week. So this should be a competitive game.
I think Lions win, but I kind of like Packers plus 7.5. Just really like the way they've played of late, especially on offense, and how that can match up with a secondary that has been banged up. Packers might end up being a playoff team here, man. It's been quite a ride for them. It's this game might not be as exciting as Bills Lions was last year, but it's got to be one of the better Lions Thanksgiving games in quite some time. So there is that.
Agreed. Dobbs leads the NFL in end zone targets, had another one last week, which he secured. Jaden Reed over Watson in Dynasty, I wrote in my fantasy wrap. You agree?
Dude, I said when he was drafted that that he could be better than Christian Watson. Like the night he was drafted, I said that could have been the case. Yeah,
well, that's pretty good. Sorry, I'm a few months, 6 months behind or more.
I don't expect you to, Dalton. I do not expect you to know everything I've said. I say a lot of stuff, buddy.
Congrats to, I agree with producer Colin. This is a binge, especially for me. I'm going to be up 9:30 a.m. start for me, and it will be embarrassingly, into this one. Let me tell you something. I wear a Whoop, Harmon. It's like an Aura ring, measures your sleep and on your wrist. So it measures your sleep and like an activity if you go golfing or basketball. Well, on Sundays, it picks up an activity for me. My buddy is so frustrated. I will burn more calories just sitting in my room watching football. I burned 4,900 the other weekend on a Sunday. Then he'll burn walking 18 holes of golf. So this is how worked up, how much I'm of a degenerate I am, and getting all this much, money involved in this Survivor. That's 600 people, 9.3 million. It's like a $25,000 equity here, but 4,900 calories sitting in my cave, just watching, a couple TVs of football. That's
bro.
I know people don't believe it, but it's I have a high enough metabolism. I'm too skinny as is. I know I don't need this, but the stress. My wife's rooting for this Survivor to be over because I'm telling you, it's too much tension in the house.
Weight loss advice for people out there, fitness advice. Get as into gambling, become as big of a degenerate as Dalton Del Don is.
I don't recommend it.
And look at that. I mean, you're going to shred 4,900 calories. Hey, it doesn't even matter what you eat for Thanksgiving. It doesn't matter what you drink. Dalton's giving you great weight loss advice. Did you overindulge on Thanksgiving or listen to this podcast afterwards? Get one of these Whoops, get in a Survivor pool, and sweat it like Dalton, baby. You'll be doing just fine. All right, with that, I agree. Binge game. Let's move on to the second one here. Commanders at Cowboys. Cowboys are 10.5 point favorites. Over under 48.5. JJ Zachariason has our first stat here on the Commanders. Brian Robinson led the Commanders with 9 targets on Sunday. His 21.4% target share is not only by far his highest of the season, but it's the first time he's ever been over a 15% mark in his career. Obviously, Antonio Gibson was out. Our Cowboys stat about the great Tony Pollard, he of the Coping Corner. In weeks 1 through 9, Tony Pollard was only credited with forcing 8 missed tackles. Over the last 2 weeks, he's forced 10 missed tackles. I'm not sure how much that means for Tony Pollard. Maybe he heard that he was on the Coping Corner radar, that we were going to be renaming it Pollard's Playground. He decided to run a little harder. That's obviously possible. But Dalton, what do you think about this game? I think if you had the Cowboys available, I would be picking the Cowboys as your survivor team over the Lions. I just don't feel great about where the Commanders are right now and feel obviously great about where the Cowboys are.
Yeah, and Dallas is so tough at home as well. The Washington set. Brian Robinson is a borderline top 12 fantasy back if, the games when Gibson's out, even in a tough matchup. I mean, it's the way Hal's throwing to his backs recently. That is a thing. So just really depends on Gibson's health. Sam Howell is averaging 45.5 pass attempts per game over his last 5. The all-time record is Stafford, 45.4. So, wow. I mean, the volume has really been there even when, the turnovers, whatever. It's just the volume's so nice for fantasy. Dallas, that stat coming from my guy, John Owning. He's married to a close buddy of mine's sister. And the narrative is he's a big Dallas fan. The narrative is Tony Pollard further removed from this ankle surgery, the tightrope surgery, the leg, and maybe he's looking like his old self now the last 2 weeks. I mean, on one hand, he was, again, a fantasy disappointment last week against the Panthers, all up until this 22-yard touchdown. Totally saved his game. On the other hand, it was a beastly, powerful run. It was almost in your face, comical to his fantasy managers. They had to sit through it all year like, wait, what? He's capable of this? So I don't know. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, but the last 2 weeks, highly encouraging. He's forcing more missed tackles than he has all season. And, oh, by the way, they have another highly favorable matchup Thursday at home against a Washington defense. It's, bleeding opponent fantasy points.
And look, Rico Dowdle being there to take some of these grinder carries and having Pollard in the 12 to 15 carry mark, like that sounds right to me too. Like, and he's never, even these last couple of games, he's never jumped into a high carry total. I think that's probably the way this goes going forward. And that does make Pollard a fantasy quote disappointment based on where he was drafted this summer, but it does make him a little more viable. I think he's just going to be probably pretty touchdown or bust. He's going to be a little like Najee Harris-esque, but on a better offense and more efficient, most likely, than Najee Harris usually is. I think that's kind of
going targetless 2 weeks ago, he saw a handful last week. So that's big for Pollard. And CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott last week. Don't be too concerned. It's just one game, but not only was it on the road, Carolina's weirdly an awful matchup if you look for opponents. Quarterbacks and receivers, they just, they don't.
Yeah, they don't got to do
running.
anything.
Exactly, you don't have to do anything. So just ignore that. And this could be a back and forth like we just saw Washington go. This could be totally opposite and require whatever. Prescott at home, they end up throwing the ball even up big anyway. So that was a blip last week. This passing game, assuming Lamb's health, is going to have another big game.
Yeah, I just feel like too, Sam Howell on the road here. It's tough, man. On the road against a really good defense, he made a lot of mistakes. Like, he just plays way too aggressive, like kind of to his detriment. Like, it's fun to watch sometimes when he plays way too aggressive, and I don't love the way this offense is structured and set up with all of these guys that they're throwing to. So I feel like this is a pretty big Cowboys win. For my video portion of this segment, I had to sort every game into one category. So I actually put Packers as the stream, Packers lines as the stream game. I think this was my skip game. If I have to put one on Thanksgiving as a skip, this is going to be the skip because I think the Cowboys take this one pretty easily, Dalton.
Yeah, absolutely no argument here. It's 11-point spread. Washington coming off a couple bad losses, and I'd love for them to knock out the Cowboys, but I'll probably be out of it myself at the time. The one year I made it to the final 23 2 years ago, the big reason why is the Raiders knocked out the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, and that was like 85% of the pool. But don't expect the same to happen here. Although the Cowboys, Scott Barrett's post, the opponent is covered like 9 of the last 10 Thanksgivings for whatever that's worth, and nothing historical when you're talking betting. But I'm with you. This is the least I look forward to among the Thanksgiving games.
This next one, obviously, Seattle Seahawks welcoming the San Francisco 49ers to Seattle. Niners are 7-point road favorites, which is pretty beefy. 43.5-point over-under. Our Niners stat comes in from John Chapman. Brock Purdy, for those uninitiated, is first in passer rating, QBR, completion percentage, touchdown percentage, passing success rate, adjusted yards per attempt, yards per completion, net yards per attempt, passer rating, and completion percentage under pressure. That was a lot of positivity I just read off about Brock Purdy. Meanwhile, for the Seahawks, Andrew Erickson notes that Zach Charbonnet leads the team in snap share with 85% against the Rams. With Walker likely out, you could expect a true workhorse share for Zach Charbonnet. I think this is crucial, and obviously we are not right sure at this moment if Geno Smith plays. It sounds like Kenneth Walker you can expect to maybe miss this game, potentially multiple games here. So, look, if it's Drew Lock, this game goes right into the skip category. Okay, and I would replace the Lions and the Packers as the binge on Thanksgiving. Even though we gave it a binge game, I think it's a good game regardless. This I would put as a binge game, Dalton, but I just don't know if Geno Smith is going to play. If Geno Smith plays, it's the binge game for me on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Drew Lock got 0.5 YPA, throwing a pick, missing a wide open JSN during his 6 pass attempt so bad that even a damaged elbow, Geno Smith had to come in for that final drive, which we led would have been game winning if not for a kicker who had made 15 straight kicks. Missed admittedly a long one. My guy Brock Purdy.
And if they didn't run the ball weirdly, and It sounds like Geno had the headset issue is what he said, so they had to just go with whatever call they had, which was a run play to Charbonnet. But yeah, bizarre stuff.
My guy Brock Purdy, BCB. I want to nickname him System, ironically, as Kittle even referred to him. The System quarterback, leading every single category. I got bored how many categories you listed there. He's leading in most of them by a wide margin. It's awesome. My MVP ticket 40-1 is live, although last I heard it's only down to 16-1 now. I guess I really need that 1 seed. So the Chiefs beating the Eagles hurt me in numerous ways. But Purdy bouncing back from the concussion, the rough stretch, which all were against tough defenses. Looking good. Your guy Ayuk got a career high in yards last week. It required 5 targets. Pretty good. Required 5 targets to reach that. He's looking great. They're healthy now. So, into Seattle. It used to be Seattle night game in primetime, used to be death. But now if it's Drew Lock, it won't be as competitive. I'm with you. K9, Kenneth Walker, I expect not to play. But Geno Smith, I expect to play. Maybe a little compromised. It does sound like his elbow is tender, and it's obviously a short turnaround.
Yeah, and even with Geno, these receivers haven't had the ceiling that we've thought because I dared to say this offense was a little Steelers-esque. We'll get to the Steelers later. There's the ceiling that these players have individually. It's just not really coming together for this team. So I am concerned about that, but still think this game would be a really fun back and forth. It'll be an interesting test for Brock Purdy. The Seahawks defense is much better, I think, than people give it credit for, which is why they've played these close competitive games where they haven't had to run up to big leads. So agree. This is a binge game and pretty excited to watch it.
Yeah, Seattle's young secondary underrated. Conversely, the Niners, Hufanga, season-ending injury.
Yes.
Rashad White juked him into a torn ACL. Tough way to go out. And then Ricky Brown is replacing
only person
him,
Rashad White's made miss his entire career, and it ends in a season-ending injury. That's a bad break.
Yeah, joke's on me with Rashad White. The volume has been there in the passing game. It is true about his missed tackles. But George Kittle has scored half his touchdowns since Purdy arrived in a fifth of many games or something. It's the stats are off the charts with his scoring compared before and after Purdy's arrival.
All right, let's get to the Black Friday game here. Dolphins 9.5-point favorites on the road going to take on the Jets, the Tim Boyle led Jets. The over/under is a mere 40.5. Our Dolphins stat comes in from Next Gen Stats. Tyreek Hill caught all 4 of his targets on in-breaking routes for 87 yards and a touchdown against the Raiders defense in Week 11. Hill leads the NFL in targets, 52, receptions, 42, yards, 682, and receiving EPA, plus 42.5 on in-breaking routes this season. I mean, that is just incredible stuff. Our Jets stat comes in from Scott Barrett, and I mean, this is just absolutely beautiful. Tim Boyle, his NCAA career, 12 to 26 touchdown to interception ratio, 5.6 YPA. Tim Boyle in his NFL career, 3 to 9 touchdown to interception ratio, 5.1 yards per attempt. Barrett adds, congrats, Jets fans. Your team found the only quarterback in the league worse than Zach Wilson. I mean, I don't even know what to say about the Jets at this point. They finally mercy bench Zach Wilson. They finally allow Robert Saleh to bench Zach Wilson. I've never seen a coach approach his quarterback situation so weirdly when he was asked about it, which is how you know like it's not his call to make. It's not his call to make to bench Zach Wilson. He finally gets to go ahead and do it, but it doesn't really move the needle for me at all on the Jets. Like Tim Boyle's not going to do much here.
Yeah, Boyle looked really bad, and his numbers look even uglier. Simeon must look awful in practice. That guy's career stats are far better than Boyle. But yeah, it's going from first to third string. Zach Wilson stumbling and falling down before entering the huddle. Becton, highly questionable to play this game. Before the season, I thought, or even without Rodgers, I thought this was a potential trap game type for Miami, but it's tough with an offense this bad. It's just really tough. Yeah. I still don't understand what happened with Mostert last week. Achane going down on the first carry, just a fantasy nightmare scenario, and in a plus matchup, nearly 14-point favorites against a Raider team that can get ran on, and he just couldn't produce in 20 opportunities, or barely produce. Certainly not for fantasy managers what they expected with that kind of opportunity in that offense that had been averaging 45 points at home. This will Tua and all the Dolphins will disappoint fantasy managers, yet they'll still win comfortably. The Jets just have an awesome defense. It's shutting down opponents' receivers, yet an offense that can't move the ball. It's a recipe for bad fantasy points.
Man, if you even just look at Tim Boyle, I think I might have said this on the podcast at some point, but if you look at Tim Boyle's, like just his Connecticut stats, 1 touchdown to 13 interceptions when he was at Connecticut, Tim Boyle. I mean, that's like unreasonably bad. What are we even doing here? I mean, he's only on the roster because he's buddies with Aaron Rodgers. Maybe this was the only guy that like that Rodgers would let them bench Zach Wilson for.
So the Jets have not allowed a non-Buffalo Bill wide receiver to score a touchdown this season, and the Jets offense totaled 9 receiving yards from their own wide receivers last week. So that's just not good for us who like just, yards and points in fantasy.
I love the headline that came out from the Jets like before this past week's game. We're gonna start to feature our younger players. I'm like, who are your younger players that you're gonna feature? Like, I get you don't want to play Allen Lazard anymore and you don't want to play Dalvin Cook anymore, but like, who's coming in? I don't know. Whatever.
Izzy.
Anyway, yeah, Izzy. Great. Good luck. Dolphins, yeah, obviously you're starting all your Dolphins and you're probably going to enjoy it, even if it's a tough defensive matchup. Keep it moving.
Especially Mostert gets the backfield himself again, if Achane status, and the Jets, I think they were like the top 3 as far as opponents' rushing attempts allowed. You just want to run the ball with the lead and avoid those corners.
And this is clearly a skip game for me. I mean, Tim Boyle. So yeah, the NFL's trying to take over a day with their like Black Friday football, and now it's like, geez, good Lord, Tim Boyle is the face of Black Friday football. So if you want to skip and just get your shopping done, or I don't know, get hammered and wander the streets for a day, you have my permission to skip this game and do that.
Agreed.
All right, with that, let's move on to the Sunday slate here. Starting in the early window. Saints at Falcons. Falcons are 1.5-point favorites, 42.5-point over-under. Our Saints stat comes in from John Daigle once again. Jameis Winston's target share off the bench against Minnesota. Chris Olave, 37.5%. Rashid Shaheed, 16.6%. Alvin Kamara, 16.6%. Taysom Hill, 8.3%. Juwan Johnson, 8.3%. And A.T. Perry, 8.3%. Our Falcons stat, Desmond Ridder, per PFF. This is important because Desmond Ridder is back as the starter in case you missed it. 6 touchdown passes to 6 INTs this season with 7 fumbles. Ridder is 3rd in the league in dropped interceptions with 7. I mean, the Falcons, we put them in the coping corner, Andy and I agree with that, even coming off their bye. I'm not too interested to see what this team does down the stretch at this point, even though we're back to Desmond Ridder. I think that's probably the right choice for the Falcons going forward.
Yeah, I agree. It is the right choice. It's not surprising. Heineke, after he was replaced before the bye, Ridder clearly, he moved the ball, nearly won that game. Lattimore's injury maybe helps London. Bijan Robinson, does he go back to getting like the last game and hopefully the goal line work? This isn't. It's a close spread, but this isn't a game I'm particularly excited to watch. I'd say the Derek Carr stat there. That's when I threw in with Winston. It's huge for Olave. No Michael Thomas. And if Carr, who has not cleared concussion protocol as of this recording, That's what fantasy managers are going to rely on. I mean, Olave could be like a top 5 fantasy wideout this week, or a top 25 fantasy wideout. That could be the difference between those two quarterbacks.
Falcons are pretty run funnel-esque too. They also play a lot of zone coverage, which Rashid Shaheed has typically ripped up zone coverage. So let's put it this way. Jameis Winston starts. This game is at least a stream. If it's Derek Carr versus Desmond Ridder, you can go ahead and skip this bad boy here.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, no, Winston would make this far more exciting of a game. But Shaheed, do you like him in DFS, or is A.T. Perry going to be underrated as far as this Michael Thomas injury and the targets? But you said this matchup you like Shaheed.
So, yeah, I think I like Shaheed. Obviously, A.T. Perry, his touchdown came on the most Jameis Winston throw of all the Jameis Winston throws. Yeah. I mean, just unbelievable stuff. Shout out to Jameis for completely leaning into the bit. And stuff like that is why no coach is ever going to ride with Jameis Winston, even though we like him in fantasy.
Right.
That being said, it was kind of fluky, right? It's not like a routine play type of thing. I think A.T. Perry is a really interesting long-term X receiver, and I think he could end up being a really critical player for this team. He's going to play more snaps than Rashid Shaheed, but I think the target stat that we read off here perfectly kind of states that, yeah, A.T. Perry is going to be on the field more. I still would bet that Shaheed finishes the game with more opportunity and therefore more receiving yards, and also could finish with more receiving yards even without getting that opportunity, just with the way he plays.
All right, that seems totally fair. That's kind of my assessment. Okay, cool. Yeah, so just pay attention to who starts quarterback here.
All right, next game up here, Steelers 1.5 point favorites going to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. 34.5 point over under. Steelers stat comes in from ESPN Stats and Info. The Steelers offense averages 15 points per game this season, 28th in the NFL. That's more than 5 fewer points per game than the next closest team with a winning record, the Seahawks. What did I just say earlier? The Seahawks are kind of Steelers-esque. I've been take shopping that. Look at that. 20.2 offensive points per game, who rank 18th in the NFL overall. This Bengals stat comes in from Ethan at Reds fan 3306. Jake Browning's college stats may be the funniest thing ever. One year he threw 43 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. His other 3 years, incredibly pedestrian. Yeah, if you look at it, there's not a lot of good stuff to say. 16-10, 19-5, 16-10, 16-10 in his first and final year in college. So for reference, producer Colin noted the 2016 Huskies team made the CFP. Browning had John Ross, Myles Gaskin, and Drew Sample on that team. The Steelers fired Matt Canada this morning. The end of an era, as many people joked with me on Twitter today, and that is very, very true for this one here. The Steelers offense is miserable. I don't think anybody's going to save them. I don't think they're suddenly going to get a boost with Matt Canada being gone, but it was time to fire Matt Canada. On the flip side, I mean, Jake Browning's going to start in this game, so not exactly excited for either. Let me tell you what, this is a skip game for me.
You bringing up the Seahawks reminded me of one thing I wanted to say before we pass them on. Was that, do you know that JSN's Monster Bowl game came against backup cornerbacks who were backup running backs? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, was it Utah? It was Utah, right?
Yes, yes, literal backup running backs, and he blew up. But he made a nice catch downfield this week. But I'm becoming increasingly worried about his long-term future there. Sucks that Joe Burrow's out for the season, and Jamar Chase's fantasy value, goes from, like a Garrett Wilson type, goes from top 5 to top 25. Yeah, Jalen Warren's awesome, but you're relying on that one big play. It's still a backfield at this committee. Deontay Johnson, one of the biggest fantasy busts for me. I bought into the more downfield, all the targets. Boy, he's just worthless in fantasy with Pickett in this offense. Canada, do you think the Canada firing is going to help at all?
It worked the 1 week in Tennessee. That was it.
Yeah, I know. One. Do you think the firing going to matter at all, all? Or not move the needle even
Pickett's
a little?
Good. Pickett's not a good quarterback. I mean, I bought into Kenny Pickett maybe taking a second-year step because he played competently down the stretch, but whether it's this is one of those, it's both things where, Matt Canada's offense is bad. It doesn't help matters, but Kenny Pickett has shown nothing to tell you that he's like a good quarterback at this point. So
yeah, I'm a huge YPA guy, and I just cannot believe I fell for Pickett, who was just horrific in the stat last year. And then I bought a 2-game sample in the preseason. Like, what am I thinking? Like, it's embarrassing to even, not that I have a lot of Pickett. I have him in one super flex, but I picked Pittsburgh to make the wild card, and I was aggressively drafting Deontay Johnson. I mean, we liked Freiermuth. I mean, bad takes. I mean, it's Pickett's definitely not going to be quarterbacking as a starter next year.
I don't know, man. It took them forever to fire Matt Canada. Like, nobody thought Matt Canada as the offensive coordinator was a good idea, except the one guy who gets to make the decision on whether Matt Canada is the offensive coordinator of the team. So, like, Mike Tomlin, I think it's the first time they've fired anybody in season since 1941.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible stuff. Like, I don't know. They could absolutely talk themselves, especially if Kenny Pickett shows even like moderate signs this offseason or the rest of the season that he could walk into next year as a starter. I think that's possible. Probably not likely, but I wouldn't give it a 0% chance. Let's just put it that way. It's a skip game for me here. I mean, come on, just keep it moving. You start Jamar Chase because you probably don't have better options, and this secondary has given up some big games before. Yikes.
Over under 34.5 for a game. I mean, it's the lack of Burrow here just ruins it for everyone involved.
Dalton burns 34 calories like in a 30-second period. Okay, that's nothing. 34.5 is nothing. Okay, next game up here: Panthers at Titans. Titans are 4.5-point favorites. Bet you can't guess where this game's going to go. Over under a 37. Our Panthers stat: they have a 54.6% chance of getting the first pick. Oh wait, they don't have the first pick. It'll go to the Chicago Bears. Our Titans stat comes in from JJ Zacharyson. Derrick Henry has now scored fewer than 6 PPR points 3 times this season. He scored fewer than 6 PPR points in a game 3 times in 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022 combined. Yikes. You also, I think, added this one, Dalton, from Jared Smalla. Derrick Henry's rushing line in 3 Titans wins this season: 25-81, 22-122, 22, 101 yards. Titans are 3.5-point favorites, 4-point favorites now. So is this a good week for Derrick Henry?
I do believe it is. Yes, the Panthers. That's actually Colin who added that one. Panthers far more vulnerable against the run. It's all game script for Tennessee. And for what it's worth, the Titans are undefeated in Tennessee this year. You look at their home road record, you may not realize that one of those games came in London. So when they've actually played in Tennessee,
did not know that.
They're undefeated this year. I bet they look miserable. I mean, my debate last week was Houston versus Jacksonville, and I went Houston, and I was wrong. I mean, Jacksonville won more easily, big time. How did Will Levis finish with 9.3 YPA and 143.8 passer rating last week in that blowout? I mean, I get it. He only threw 7. I guess how he did it was he only threw 17 passes. You don't count a bad fumble loss in passer rating. Is that right? The case? No
he
couldn't produce
rating.
anything. He couldn't produce anything in the first part of the game, and it was just obviously not impressive whatsoever there. So that's one of the funnier numbers.
One of them was a flea flicker too, right? One of them was a flea flicker.
The Hopkins game to make it 28-7, I believe, was the flea flicker. Yeah, trick play too. So yeah, Levis, he struggles bad against pressure. Jacksonville struggles to get pressure, but it was still not a good matchup there. And yeah, this is a Henry week. If there's ever going to be one at home against, this is arguably the 2 worst teams in football. I mean, they're both playing poorly right now.
Patriots might have something to say about that, but yeah, they at least have some viable NFL players to the Tennessee Titans. I don't know what the Patriots do. All right, next game up here, Bucks at Colts. Colts are 2.5-point home favorites, 43.5-point over under. Bucks stat from the Bucks official account: Rachaad White, among NFL running backs, ranks 2nd in receiving yards and 3rd in receptions this season. Our Colts stat comes in from Dare Carriger. Most slot receiving yards by a wide receiver in their first 9 games of their career since 2017. Number 1, CeeDee Lamb, 557. Leads the list by a lot. He's a hell of a player. Number 2, Josh Downs, 340. Number 3, Jaden Reed, 325. Number 4, Justin Jefferson, 323. Number 5, Jalen Waddle with 301. Josh Downs, Jaden Reed, those guys are ballers. Josh Downs is participating in this game. He should be healthy coming off a bye. This is one of those games, Dalton, I think is firmly in the stream category because it doesn't matter too much in terms of like, are either of these teams going to win the Super Bowl? No, they could hang around the fringes of the playoff contention. I mean, the Bucks could win the damn South because that division's a joke. But I could see this game being really fun for fantasy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Indoors, both teams are fast-paced. Rashad White, when I did my initial Fantasy Pros ranks, he's like the running back 20 or something. I'm like, what? I moved him up to my top 5 this week. He gets all the touches indoors. The Colts have allowed the 4th most fantasy points to running backs. Conversely, we got a pass funnel Tampa Bay defense. Michael Pittman, I love here as a top fantasy start. It's a tough one for Jonathan Taylor. You're starting him in season long, but definitely an avoid in DFS. And I want to talk Josh Downs to you because DFS, he's such an interesting option here against a Tampa Bay team that's allowing the 2nd most fantasy points to the slot. You love him as a player. Does the bye week make him fresher off that knee? I think it's too worrisome with him admitting that this has been happening since this happened before the year and his snaps the last few weeks. If not for that awesome, 50-yard play downfield, the game before the bye, he was totally off the stat sheet. So I'm probably going to recommend not even playing him in season long. Probably it's so risky, but the matchup's so good. What do you do with him with this knee injury?
Yeah, the knee injury stuff is just something you're going to have to monitor, like see what his practice reports are like, because totally get it. Like that is very concerning. It's a great matchup if he's out there and he is such a good player. I think probably you avoid it in DFS, but season long, it just depends on your other options.
Fair. Okay. Because it's such a pass funnel, to be clear. Tampa Bay, This is just insane. You can't run against them. But they can be. I've like buried the lead here. Is every single member in their secondary injured? They're all getting MRIs, right? Carlton Davis, Jamil Dean, and Levante David, I believe, are all getting MRIs and hurt. So I mean, I like Minshew as a cheap DFS and Pittman as a top start. Yeah, I love this for the. Okay, yeah, Downs. Even if Downs plays 33% of the snaps, he might be worth it here.
Yeah, are you brave enough to take a chance on Alec Pierce? I don't think you should be brave enough.
No, I'd go like Granson at tight end before I'd go the Pierce route there. But yeah, this could be indoors, fast pace. This could be a good one.
Yeah, I will say, just for the warning, like if it goes wrong, obviously Baker is always capable of throwing himself into a hole. There's always that. And I would think that Todd Bowles, this is the type of matchup that he can send a backup quarterback spinning if he like just blitzes Minshew a ton and everything, but it just sets up really well on paper. So I'm with you. This is firmly a stream game for me and very much like a comfortable game from a fantasy football perspective. Let's keep it moving here. Going on to Patriots -3 going to New York to take on the Giants, 33.5. Oh my God. This game is definitely going to matter in the Caleb Williams, Drake May sweepstakes, even though we just watched the Giants kind of fumble the bag with Tommy DeVito. By the way, our Giant stat, Tommy DeVito from NFL on CBS. Consecutive starts without a 3 passing touchdown game. Tommy DeVito, 0. Janny Dimes, 48. Our Patriots stat from Nacion Patriots. This is a first ever translated tweet for Stat Nerd. Among all the teams in the NFL, the Patriots are the 4th most likely to obtain the number 1 overall pick in the next draft with 5.2% at this time. These teams are not very good, Dalton. Not a lot of players we want to play in fantasy in this one.
Where do we begin? Tommy DeVito. I
forgot about your DeVito.
What is going on here, dude?
Now that Bagent has been sent back to the bench, and the whole idea that the Bears more exciting with Tyson Bagent. Now that we put that to bed, give the full attention to DeVito.
Now he doesn't have to play in Dallas in this horrific environment. He'll shake off 9 sacks, get 9.5 YPA, 3 TD passes. Oh, he's just not only a top 10 fantasy QB, knocking out 39% of my survivor pool. Those people who had Washington. DeVito became the first quarterback in franchise history to throw 5 touchdowns over his first 2 starts. He now has more multiple career touchdown games than Kenny Pickett has in his career. He started 2 games.
What a comp.
Is that good? Yeah. So DeVito.
You're better than Kenny Pickett. Congratulations. What an achievement.
All right, so done with my you know what? I'm really honestly, instead of bragging here, I'm a coward. In my last sit start column, I had actually written out that I'm starting DeVito in a couple Superflex leagues, like over Bryce Young and stuff. And I'm like, if you squint, Washington is the best matchup possible. I mean, they traded their top two defensive linemen, and they allow the most fantasy points to quarterbacks, receivers, all that. But it's like, you look at his weapons, you look at that team total, and I wanted to use this funny forget about it tweet that John Legeza tweeted with literally Joe Pesci's face on it. It's his character's name in Goodfellas is literally Tommy DeVito. I know you're not a big movie reference guy, but I was a coward. I deleted it. I'm like, no one in the world's actually going to use this actionable device and use Tommy DeVito. So I deleted it and I said, use instead.
Damn, Dalton, come on, man.
Instead, I'm like, forget about using any of their Giants in the lineups other than Barkley. But I did start DeVito. He was a top 10 fantasy QB. So funny. Probably won't ever happen again, but it was, I'd love to see it. Saquon Barkley, all 83 of his rushing yards last week came after there was just a minute left in the third quarter. But he looked good. And dude, he made three spectacular, or two of them were touchdowns and another spectacular catch downfield. Like just three awesome plays through the air for Barkley, who looks healthy. So one thing that's undeniable, honestly, is that the offense is better than whatever version we saw of Daniel Jones out there. No matter the opponent, it's interesting to see the movie. It's not like you're starting Slayton, who left hurt anyway, or any of these guys with Waller out, but it was pretty wild to see a guy take 9 sacks and yet win a football game as a 11-point under, or whatever it was, 9.5-point underdog.
Well, that is your Tommy DeVito update from Dalton Del Don, our lead Tommy DeVito correspondent here on the podcast. Look, he certainly made them watchable last week. I don't know how much of that has to do with Washington being Washington. Imagine being in a survivor pool and taking Washington. I mean, come on. I know the Giants, the whole situation, but
funnily enough, in this $9 million pool, they are the only team that's led the week in being picked first, because they were week 1 against the Cardinals, and last week they were the top team. So your Commanders are the only team that's led the pool in top most pick twice. Pretty funny that producer Colin wrote a highlight on this is don't spend too much time on this game. So I had a tight 18 minutes on Tommy DeVito, but we're finished with it now.
Yeah. I have nothing else to say about this game. It's a skip game for me. Dalton will be the only one watching. I'm interested what your what's your thing called? The noob or whatever? Your whoop, your little thing that reads your heart rate.
WHOOP. Whoop. Yeah.
Your whoop. Yeah, I'm interested to see what your whoop rating is while you're watching Tommy DeVito carve up Bill Belichick's defense. That is the only thing I'm interested in from this game. Otherwise, it's a skip for me. Next one here, huge game. Jags going to Houston to take on the Texans. Jaguars are 1.5-point road favorites, a 47.5-point over and under. Jaguars stat from JJ Zacharyson. Travis Etienne over his last 2 games, 7.7 PPR points per game. In his 4 games prior, 27.1 PPR points per game. Our Texan stat comes in from PFF. Tank Dell is the wide receiver 3 over the last 3 weeks. Pretty incredible stuff. This game is obviously a binge, and I mean, who do you not want to start in fantasy in this one?
Yeah, this one's super fun. Okay, so Trevor Lawrence, as Arden Key, former teammate, pointed out, Trevor Lawrence struggles when moved off his first read. People looked at the stats. Turns out he really, really does. But guess what? Titans first, they allow the most first read target percentage in the league. Also, all the nerd under the hood stuff helped Ridley last week. So there's very, very good matchups for that offense last week. Should be noted there. Houston with Stingley and Nelson healthy. They've not been healthy all year until the last couple weeks. These young guys, super interesting secondary, although their linebacker remains suspended. But so Jacksonville really bounced back. That was incredibly impressive. And Trevor Lawrence proved that that knee injury that whispers were worried runs not 1 but 2 touchdowns in. So that was an impressive bounce back. Houston nearly caused me a heart attack. 2 close reviews went my way on this weird punt fumble that I thought for sure was off Houston. George Fant is a hero on one of those George Stroud interceptions in the red zone. He made the tackle. Stroud threw 3 interceptions. All 3 were caught inside the 25. And 2 of them, the last 2 in the fourth quarter, his team had a 4-point lead and they're within field goal range. I mean, they were really costly, but man, the guy's obviously going to be a superstar if he isn't already. And Tank Dell's awesome. Tank Dell maybe his most important play of the game was they ran a trick play and he didn't throw it when the player was open downfield. Yeah. So love to see him. I'm ranking Dell ahead of Nico Collins weekly moving forward. Looks like a special player. This game's awesome. Is one of my favorite of the week. This is like The Curse. If you're not watching The Curse on Showtime, new TV show through first 2 episodes, so good. Watch this game of the week. I bet on the Texans last week, 25-1 to win the AFC, and I got him at plus 240 to win this division. I'm just a believer in the defense. I really think they've got something going here. They got the coaching. They got a quarterback with a crazy YPA that I say I'm a fan of there. So, I think that this is obviously would go a long way toward helping that. And Jacksonville already lost in Jacksonville. Houston's on this winning streak, so I get why this spread's what it is, and I would not be surprised if Jacksonville wins this game. But I'm a Texans fan for the second straight week here.
Yeah, I could really see either of these teams. I mean, not just making the playoffs, but like making some noise in the playoffs too. Like I'm with you that the Texans defense is sort of the undersold story here because of course, CJ Stroud's awesome. Nico Collins and Tank Dell have been awesome. This is a good offense, but the defense is a really quality unit that is D'Amico Ryans has his boys cooking, man. Will Anderson, like the trade for Will Anderson's been a huge hit. So I love everything that's going on in Houston right now. I do think Jacksonville, like I don't believe their offensive performance last week is a fluke. I think they can actually build on that and sustain it.
Couple things. Will Anderson missed practice Friday. The odds of players a full up play returning are low. So another hero that you did return and make all this pressure. Bobby Slowick just continues to call runs on 1st and 10, just over and over and over, and they're getting 2-yard gains. So Stroud's his bar is higher to clear than other quarterbacks right now. He's starting obvious passing downs and long, second and third and long situations. And Slowick, I thought was supposed to be this bright offensive coordinator, and it's not. I don't know. They need to throw more on early downs. I get that it looked the interceptions last week and 6 turnovers last 2 weeks. Maybe that makes my argument look weaker, but I would prefer them being more aggressive on neutral passing downs.
Yeah, I mean, I do like a lot of what Bobby Slowick has done in the past game. I think that's something that he can hopefully grow from because overall, I think he's been a really good offensive coach for the Houston Texans here. All right, let's move to the late window. Browns going to Denver to take on the Broncos. Broncos are 2.5-point home favorites, 35.5 over under. I could see this one going under just because the Broncos are tastefully boring and the Browns are the Browns with Dorian Thompson-Robinson right now. Not excited about that team going forward. Our Browns stat from John Daigle. David Njoku's target share from PJ Walker, 21.7%. Deshaun Watson, 19%. With DTR, there's been a beefy 37% share of the team targets. Our Broncos stat comes in from Zach Seegers. Courtland Sutton's red zone numbers are absolutely disgusting. 32.5% target share, 10th best in the NFL. 84.6% catch rate, first. Minimum of 10 targets, first among all players with 10 targets there. I mean, he's been a monster. 8 touchdowns, leads the NFL in the red zone. 99 yards, leads the NFL in the red zone. Like, Courtland Sutton is having a great season and like deserves to be given a lot of credit for that. Again, I think this is a pretty low scoring game, but anybody stand out to you as a potential fantasy option in this game?
And Njoku, the second most targets among all pass catchers last week, so you can use him if you, at the tight end position. But that Cleveland Browns team's definitely going to be winning with their defense and Jerome Ford. The Broncos defense been playing better, but that's still a plus matchup for Ford. And then, Sutton has just been a beast in the red zone. Russell Wilson succeeded with just check down. Mr. Unlimited has turned into Mr. Check Down, but it's working. It moves the sticks better, and he just has the lowest ADOT you'll see in the league until he gets in the red zone. Then he targets Sutton, who's a beast down there. So, yes, you're starting. I think he scored in 7 of his last 8 games, so you're starting him in your fantasy team.
Yeah, I think you keep riding Courtland Sutton. He's, again, just having a really good year, and Russell Wilson has apparently fully bought into what Sean Payton is, doing here, and that relationship has been really good. I think the Browns can survive with DTR. The offense is obviously going to be super limited. I do think Amari Cooper is probably a stay away from me in this game. Pat Surtain has really turned his game up of late. He's been awesome. And like with DTR, it's clear that they want to get the ball out quick. They want to do some yak stuff. Njoku's been a great option. And no surprise, Elijah Moore pops up for 6 catches when they're trying to play that way. So yeah, I think Amari Cooper's kind of banged going forward and is definitely somebody I'd try to not start in this one.
Yeah, Surtain matchup and the quarterback situation, agreed. And this is another tougher matchup for all the Broncos. Javonte Williams, second straight tough matchup, but remain patient. The volume is so encouraging.
I don't think this game is a binge game for sure, but I'm not sure I can call it a skip either because these two teams they're alive in the fringes of the playoff race. But are you streaming or skipping this game, Dalton?
Yeah, more of a stream. Well, I'm a sicko. I watch everything, but more of a stream. Certainly not a binge. Agreed. It's lower going to be lower scoring. But wow, it's surprising to see Denver win 4 straight games after that 1-5 start.
Oh, make no mistake. If this game was on Thursday Night Football, I'd watch it start to finish. This game was on the Black Friday. I mean, I'm probably going to watch that Black Friday game, snap one to the final snap. Yeah. Like, all right, I'm a sicko too, buddy. This is just because we put them in the skip category doesn't mean we are literally not watching them.
Okay, all right, we're in a safe space here with you. Okay, all right,
yeah,
okay.
We are. This is the safest of possible safe spaces when it comes to like what football will you watch. I think there's a beauty to bad football sometimes too, and I also think, for the record, your Twitter timeline is always complaining about games. You can ignore these people safely. 1, and number 2. Half these people don't know the difference between like what's bad football and what's good defense. So keep that in mind when you're seeing a bunch of people that get paid to watch football complain about football. That's my rant on that. All right. NFC West matchup. This one matters a lot. Rams at Cardinals. Cardinals are 1.5 point favorites. 44.5 point over under. The Rams. This game matters a lot for them. This one comes in from PFF. Our stat for the Rams. Puka Nacua is currently on pace for 1,524 receiving yards this season. The rookie record is 1,473. So yeah, Puka continues to ball. He should continue to ball if Cooper Kupp has to miss any time. Our Cardinal stat comes in from at NFL_T_Strack, Tom Strachan. Marquise Brown without Kyler Murray, 12.5 PPR points per game. With Kyler Murray, 3.5 points per game. It has been a bummer for Marquise Brown. We talked about him on the Panic Meter episode, obviously. But Dalton, what is your kind of diagnosis on this Cardinals offense with Kyler Murray the last couple of games?
Yeah, he's missed some throws, but overall I've been encouraged, and I just think actually I need to reassess my priors entering the year that outside of Cliff Kingsbury, I think Murray can do. Maybe that YPA was part of the problem last year was Kingsbury, and Murray's running. He's running like he has before, so the knee injury has not been an issue. It's ironic that Hollywood Brown's numbers have fallen. I suggested the otherwise would happen because that's what evidence pointed to last season without Hopkins, and with Murray, Brown was a top 10 fantasy wideout. But yeah, I mean, he's missed a couple big plays, but that's been the story of Brown's season. You're playing him just depending on volume. He's a top 36-ish type fantasy start this week. No Michael Wilson resulted in a bigger increase for Greg Dortch, not Rondell Moore, who caught the big touchdown in the first drive, but that was his only target of the game. Dortch, if there's no Wilson and you're in a really deep PPR league, he actually maybe could become viable. Trey McBride's the guy. The stat sheet was quieter last week, but he's getting his usage is that of a top 5 fantasy tight end, and Murray's only going to get better. He's, again, missing some throws, but he's clearly a huge upgrade there. And then it's all about the injuries for the Rams this week. Kupp status in question with an ankle. Nakua's status in question with, I believe, his shoulder. Atwell's value could be, nothing to a top 25 if those other guys both had to sit out. And then Kyron Williams in the backfield is expected back, and we're kind of guessing on his immediate workload. So it's just all about health. And the Rams, sadly, we were praising Matthew Stafford's all first month of the year. Suddenly he sits dead last in completion percentage over expectation, not the next gen, but the other one. He's dead last in that one. And he's missed throws last week. We saw the Kupp misconnection, the Henderson one. So I know he's playing through an injury, but it's not as great as we once had hoped, 6 weeks ago, looking at this Rams team.
Is Puka just like, has his entire body been on the injury report this year?
He seems like a really tough guy playing through multiple injuries, and he takes hard hits. But it seems like he has that shoulder that keeps getting hit, suffering these massive hits each week. But yeah, it does seem that way. But we're recording this too early in the week to tell you much advice other than just really pay attention because it means so much, the health of Nacua, Kupp, and Kyron Williams.
Yeah, Nacua is worth noting. The reason he fell in the draft was injuries. So, that is a big thing to monitor from him from like a long-term, a dynasty perspective, whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think Marquise Brown is going to have a big game at some point. I don't know if I'm betting it to be this game. Aaron Donald, Kyler Murray, interesting matchup there in terms of like, can he stand in under the pressure, everything like that. I think this game is firmly a stream game for me. It's not quite binge, but very interested to continue to track Murray's progress. And yeah, Matthew Stafford's not playing as well, I think, as he was to start the year. He's now kind of playing like his stats reflect his play, where I don't think that was the case to start the year. But still an overall entertaining offense that I do want to watch. I think this game is going to be a pretty fun one. All right, next one up here. Chiefs at Raiders. Oh, boy, the Kansas City Chiefs are 9.5-point favorites going to Las Vegas to take on the Raiders with a 44.5 or a 44-point over-under. Our Chiefs stat comes in from KCTV. The Chiefs, 26 drops this season, lead the league, and 21% of Patrick Mahomes' incomplete passes this season have come on drops. That MVS drop, I mean, that was one of the most brutal ones you're ever going to see. And like, that was an MVS special. That is who he is. They didn't bump Rashee Rice's role. He only ran a route on 52% of the dropbacks coming out of the bye. That's not that unexpected. He's still not I don't think he's still ready to be a full-time player. Justin Watson was getting a ton of looks. He dropped the pass right after MVS. Like, I just really don't know what the Chiefs were. I mean, obviously they were hoping Sky Moore would take a step. That didn't happen. They were hoping on a lot of stuff that didn't happen. But I mean, MVS is the guy they've paid. Justin Watson was the guy they brought back. Like, this is the group that they've got, and I don't think it's good enough. Raiders stat from Michael Leone. Devontae Adams still capable of insane usage. He had 13 targets, and he led the league in Week 11 with 195 air yards. I mean, when you get opportunities like that, you can have a nice 80-yard and a touchdown game with Aiden O'Connell.
Kelsey dropped to that at 4th and 25, as producer Colin points out, was a dime to Watson at the end of the game, too. Just wild stuff. Mahomes has finished inside the top 5 fantasy QBs 1 week this season. 1 week. All year he's been inside the top 5 fantasy QBs. The Browns have scored more points this year than the Kansas City Chiefs. The last time the Chiefs scored a second half point was October 22nd. The last time they scored a second half point. Andy Reid, coming off the bye, lost this game. And yeah, the other note I had was Rashee Rice's route participation lowest since week 6. So that wasn't great either. But yeah, it's the wide receivers are costing an otherwise unfair team. Maybe that just makes it slightly more fair because you have the best quarterback of all time with easily his best defense, a really legit defense. This Chiefs defense isn't just, oh man, he has a good defense. Oh, he might have one of the 3 or 4 best defenses in the league too. So that combination's unfair. In a way, this is just whatever kind of evens thing out, having these receivers drop every other pass because otherwise they're set up. They'll obviously be fine. But yeah, right now, this is a weak spot in there, and it looks like they should have addressed it a little bit more. But I still expect the Chiefs to be totally and Mahomes to figure it out. But obviously, it's highlighted on a Monday night that cost them the game.
Yeah, I agree. I think they will be fine. It's just like, this is going to cost them in a big game. I mean, it cost them in a big game this past week. It's less important to lose to the Eagles from like a AFC playoff standpoint, like a seeding standpoint, but you still don't want to lose a game, period. And 2, it will cost them a game. This receiver stuff, like that it's one thing. Like, yeah, even Colin points out in week 1 there were all those drops, and you don't know if they're going to win that game with some of those drops. Like, they could still end up losing to the Lions in week 1. They lost the game last night. Like, literally, MVS catches that pass, they win the game. Most likely. I mean, most likely, obviously. It's nothing is for sure, but still.
Part of the reason I went Texans is long shots AFC is I feel like suddenly a little bit wide open. I mean, Kansas City vulnerable, Miami they're vulnerable. The Bills are 6-5. Browns lost Watson. Ravens look legit, admittedly. But Jacksonville, whatever. I mean, I don't know. I think it's a winnable conference with the state of thanks to the state of the Chiefs' wide receivers.
From a Raiders perspective, yeah, you're starting Adams in fantasy, and I mean you're starting Jacobs. He doesn't have the same floor as he did when Jimmy G was just throwing him a bunch of passes, but still, I do think that he's a viable fantasy player. To me, this is a skip game. I mean, the Chiefs' offense is boring to watch, and I think the Chiefs' defense is going to put Aiden O'Connell in a bit of a body bag here. So you could go ahead and skip this game, which is crazy to say because the Chiefs are involved, but that's how I feel about it. All right, next game up here, Bills at Eagles. Eagles are 3.5-point favorites. It's an over-under of 48. Our Bills stat comes in from Doug Farrar. The Bills used some kind of pre-snap motion on 15 of Josh Allen's attempts against the Jets. Allen completed all 15 of those passes with 3 explosive plays and all 3 of his touchdowns on those plays. That is definitely noteworthy because it's a change in the offensive coordinator. Eagles stat from Paul Hembo. The Chiefs had 7 more first downs. The Chiefs had 98 more yards. The Chiefs ran 20 more plays. The Chiefs had 4 more sacks. Number 1 receiver, A.J. Brown, had 8 receiving yards. No touchdown passes for Jalen Hurts. The Eagles still won. I mean, this game is obviously binge. These two teams are great. They're not. The Bills have had their flaws this year, but overall, I still think they're a good team. The Eagles have had their flaws this year, but still, again, these are good teams with high-end caliber offensive players. A.J. Brown is having a bounce back in this one. That is written in the stars, but it was nice to see Devontae Smith pop up for some big moments.
Yep, he's done so without Goddard, and then L'Jarius Sneed is just such a tough, shadow matchup this year for Brown. Yeah, I'm having a tough time who to rank first, A.J. Brown or Stephon Diggs. So I think both are going to bounce back. Diggs is how many yards over the last 2 weeks? I mean, totally quiet. But the Eagles are tough to run against. Totally can be passed on. So yeah, Diggs or Brown is your top fantasy wideout for me this week. In big bounce back spots for me. So this should be a fun one of the games of the week. A clear binge. Absolutely.
Yeah, clear binge. I mean, and it's a try to get everybody in the pool type of game. I mean, Gabe Davis, no targets last week. Khalil Shakir, I think, is better than Gabe Davis and could start supplanting him more and more in this offense. Gabe's going to have big moments. Shoot, he could have a big moment in this game, but he's really not in the circle of trust anymore. Dalton Kincaid is in the circle of trust. This is, again, I would try to get as many players from this game into your starting lineup as possible. I think it's going to be very fun. The Eagles defense has its holes, and the Bills definitely have holes on defense.
Yeah, good matchup for DeAndre Swift and Gabe Davis. I am starting. The Eagles have allowed literally the most fantasy points to opposing
that is bold, baby.
Wide receivers. They have to throw. They're going to have to throw with that Eagles scoring points. So yeah, I would play Gabe this week. Shakir is just a little annoying that our guy Ayuk had the longest touchdown catch of the season for about an hour, and then Shakir beat him with his catch later. But that was a really nice play by him. But yeah, I'm firing up Gabe Dave in this matchup.
Well, I love Khalil Shakir, so I will allow him to beat out Brandon Ayuk in something. I will allow that. Producer Colin makes a great point that Kelsey obviously got a lot of targets, only 7. It wasn't explosive stuff, but the Eagles really struggled to coverage the slot and struggled to cover the middle of the field. So that's why I like Shakir, and that is why I like Kincaid in this game. He should absolutely eat in this one. So definite binge game. Let's move on to the final 2 games of the week. Primetime Sunday Night Football. Ravens -4 going to LA to take on the Chargers. 46.5-point over-under here. Our Raven stat comes in from JJ Zacharyson. Odell Beckham saw a season high 30.4% target share against the Bengals on Thursday, but he finished tied for 4th in routes run for Baltimore, which is pretty funny. The Chargers stat comes in from Pro Football Focus. Justin Herbert's 92.7 PFF grade versus the Packers was the highest single game grade of his career. It's also the best of all quarterbacks in Week 11. I mean, the Chargers are they're a bad joke at this point. They have the same season every year. They have the same game every week. It's just so frustrating to watch. I said this on the Panic Meter show. I'm kind of glad Austin has the week off from our podcast this week. Can't imagine he wants to be in front of a mic right now. I'm not sure how much he's going to want to do it after facing the Ravens on Sunday Night Football. That is not going to be particularly fun. This game is a binge game because the Ravens are good and the Chargers, I mean, how can they screw this up this week? That's at least entertaining television. But I don't know. What do you think of the Ravens offense without Mark Andrews? I think is the critical point from a fantasy perspective in this game.
No, that was my question. Was going to be to you. Yeah, the splits with him on off field this year. I think it said Jackson hadn't thrown a touchdown with Andrews off the field before his injury, but limited. And Isaiah Likely is one's rushing to pick up in fantasy, and could be a top 12 guy, or fine replacement, but it also could be a problem in an offense that is limited. So absolutely agree with you. This is a binge watch. Too bad that all those drops last week. Talk about the Chiefs. Boy, the Chargers suffered multiple ones themselves. Keenan Allen in the sun, Quentin Johnston in the game on the line. But I do want to circle back to you. What are your thoughts on the Andrews-less Baltimore passing attack?
I think that, I don't know, fascinating one here. I think that when you look at the way Odell Beckham has played, he did pick up that injury on Thursday night. That's something to monitor. But he was doing as Andy made the point, he's doing the post-game interviews and stuff. He's probably going to be fine. I think he should definitely be getting a boost here. But I think Zay Flowers is going to be a second half league winner. I know it's a stupid phrase, and we've banned the phrase. And officially, I just have to cancel myself now for even saying it. I'd tell you to edit it out of the podcast column, but I got to be accountable here. I think he's going to be a second half riser. Let's put it that way with Zay Flowers. I think there's a lot of meat left on the bone with him, man. He can win against man coverage in the intermediate and deep portion of the field. He should pick up a lot of targets vacated from Mark Andrews here. We saw in week 1, obviously, he got a lot of design targets without Mark Andrews, but he's been showing more and more to me that he can be a legit man coverage beater. I expect him to take a big step in the second half of the season. And I like what I've seen out of Bateman lately. Look, it's tough to lose Mark Andrews. All these guys have their flaws. Beckham, Flowers, Bateman for sure. Isaiah Likely hasn't really stepped up when he's been called upon to be Mark Andrews' replacement, but I do think he can be a viable player. Losing Andrews is tough. He's the most trusted guy in the pass game, but I do think they can be okay if Bateman continues to progress, if Flowers is more relied upon, and Beckham stays on the field.
Yeah, Keaton Mitchell could also be that quote unquote league winner. I know everyone's upset at him doing flopping on a prime time, but he still has that upside. And Gus Edwards, one injury away from a prime spot. Yeah, I struggle with kind of reconciling what kind of team this Baltimore, how good are they? But then I realize here's what they are. They have a top 3 defense, one of the best coaches in the league, the best kicker of all time, and Lamar Jackson at quarterback. And that's enough to make them one of the 3 best teams in the league right there. I don't know how you want to look at their rushing attack or their passing attack, but you put the sum of those parts, and that's a damn good football team. But the loss of Andrews, definitely, it could be something.
Yeah, love it. I'm interested to at least see it. From a Chargers perspective, look, you're playing Keenan Allen, you're playing Austin Eckler, and it just everybody else is it's tough. This is an offense that's not going to reach expectations, period.
I'll tell you this, I like the Chargers a lot more as dogs than I do favorites. I will say that. When everyone writes them off, and they're a team that can beat anyone on any given day and then lose to anyone like that. So I expect this to be close. Even they couldn't cover against the Packers last week, watch them cover this game.
Final game, Monday Night Football, Bears at Vikings. Vikings are 3.5-point home favorites. It's a 45-point over-under. Our Bear stat comes in from Pro Football Focus. Justin Fields on 20-plus yard throws this season, 13 of 26, 332 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's been incredible throwing the ball downfield. DJ Moore clearly benefits when he's in there. Our Viking stat comes in from Next Gen Stats. Josh Dobbs currently ranks among the top 2 quarterbacks in scramble runs, rushing yards, touchdowns, rushing yards over expected, and first downs over expected this season. Yeah, he's been awesome in the scramble game. I think, look, it definitely showed on Sunday night that he's a little bit of a little bit volatile in terms of his ability as a passer, and he will put the ball in harm's way. He is not a game manager, but that scramble stuff has been electric this season.
And didn't you also, one of the stats earlier, say he leads the league in 11 dropped interceptions? So he's definitely loose with the football at times. Yeah, it's so fun to watch, man. Also leads the league in highlight-worthy plays, just the scramble rate. And that hit last week, that fumble on Monday night, with unnecessary roughness. That guy is just coming off a suspension, and he took that tough hit. So I think Madison and Chandler are splitting work against a Bears defense leads the league in yards per carry against. It's an awesome run defense, so they might have to do some damage as a receiver out of the backfield. It's not a great matchup for the running backs there. And the question here is, does Justin Jefferson return? Hopefully we get clarity before Monday night, because people are going to be wondering that against a pass funnel Bears defense. It's really emerging, by the way. I mean, they went into Detroit last week, wreaked a bunch of havoc and turnovers, and they traded for Sweat, and maybe they're not going to be a doormat defense over the second half of the season.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the Bears defense has shown legit signs of growth. I don't think it's going to be enough to save Matt Eberflus's job, but I think they've shown legit signs of growth. And I think that when you look at this offense with Justin Fields, it's much more exciting. There's much more life to it. DJ Moore definitely benefits from it. So I think this game, I could easily see the Bears winning this game. But I'll pick the Vikings. I think it's a stream game, this one.
Yeah, it should be fun. How many rushed? 18 carries, Justin Fields. I mean, you got to treat him as a borderline top 5 fantasy QB every week. I mean, you just love that. And DJ Moore's caught all of his touchdowns from Fields this season. He's the top 3 fantasy wideout with Fields and a top 80 without him. It's pretty wild splits. And then Khalil Herbert gets a boost with Foreman's injury there. It's although really not a good matchup either for him. The 2 of the 4 best run defenses in the league are playing in this game. So Fields and Dobbs, not what we expect a few weeks back, but here they are. And great to see Fields play through that thumb injury. It was bleeding, but it made it work. And the 18 carries is just so monstrous for fantasy, just high floor and ceiling. I'm with you. This is a fun one. Should be a good game with the Bears a live dog. Agreed.
I think literally anything could happen in this game with the way these two quarterbacks play, like how volatile they can be, but they can make these huge plays with their legs too. Both these defenses are way better than expected. Yeah, this is definitely, the more I look at it, I'm like, I believe anything that comes out of this game, I could see it happening because these two teams are just so different than we expected them to be. They're so different than they were even like a month ago, obviously, especially on Minnesota's side. So yeah, that is going to be a very fun Monday night game. And I don't normally say that about Bears games. So Andy Barron's be happy about that.
Yeah, no doubt. It should be it should be a very solid watch. Harmon, appreciate you humoring me, listening to some Survivor. Go Niners, Purdy. Good stuff, man. Happy holidays to everyone listening. Happy Thanksgiving. Good times. Good luck with your lineups this week.
Appreciate you, buddy. That was awesome. Huge episode. Stat Nerd and Viewer's Guide combined all into one. That was awesome. Thank you, Dalton, for that. Appreciate you, and happy Thanksgiving to you and the family as well. Hope you're able to enjoy some level of peace and maybe good food, while you're burning 4,900 calories. I can't get over this whole thing. So in the meantime, that is going to do it for us today. Be sure to tune in first thing Monday morning. It's going to be a while until you hear from us, but tune in first thing Monday morning to hear Scott Pianowski and I break down all the action from Week 12. Until then, we're out.